Creating these classes requires equipment and services that cost money. If you appreciate this education, please think about going to elithecomputerguy.com and offering a one-time or monthly recurring donation. Welcome back. As you know, I am Eli, the Computer Guy, and in today's class, I'm going to be showing you how to update and delete records within tables within your MySQL database. So at this point, you should know how to create databases, you should know how to create tables, you should know how to insert records into tables, and how to use the select statement to be able to pull records out of tables. So at this point, we're going to show you then how to basically modify those records. So in the previous examples, basically I put a number of kids as records into the users table that we created. And so one of the questions is what happens if one of those kids gets older? You know, they went from being 9 years old and now they are 10 years old. So you need to go in there and you need to actually be able to modify that record. So that is what I'm going to show you today. It is basically using what is called the update command. So you'll do update and you'll be able to update records within your tables within MySQL. Then of course, you know, what happens if a user leaves or for whatever reason you want to delete a record within your MySQL table? I will be showing you how to use the delete statement in order to do that. And so that is what we're going to be learning today. So now that we're ready to learn how to be able to update records and delete records within your MySQL database tables, let's go over to the computer so I can show you how this works. So here we are back at my lab environment. Again, I'm running a MacBook Professional using VirtualBox. Within VirtualBox, I have spun up an instance of Ubuntu Desktop 18.04. So that's going to give us a graphical user environment. And this is what I've installed MySQL onto. So if you have MySQL installed onto a normal machine, that should work fine for you. But just to explain what's going on here, I'm going to go down here to show applications. Then we're going to type in terminal, because we need to get to that command prompt. We need the terminal, and now we are in the terminal session, so we can actually get into MySQL. Now, if you're brand new to this series of classes, you have not watched the previous series of classes, I don't log in to MySQL the normal way. So the normal way of logging into MySQL is MySQL space -u, username space -p. So this is the normal way that you'll be logging in to your MySQL database server. We have not created user accounts yet and dealt with privileges and all that. I'm kind of teaching some would say in a kind of an ass backwards way, but I think it's an ass frontwards way. I don't know, that came out wrong. The way that I'm doing it right now is to do MySQL, do sudo MySQL. And so what this will do is this will actually log us in as the root local host account. So this gives us all the full privileges on this particular database server. If you already have a normal user account on your MySQL database server with the appropriate privileges, deal with that. I'm just doing it this way because that's how this particular series of classes is going. Anyways, we're gonna hit enter, our super secret password 123456, and you hit return, and yay, we're in MySQL. I talked about in the previous class that whenever you're doing these little labs, that you should try to recreate your database, recreate your tables, recreate your rows or your records for every class to get you used to actually doing that. I'm not going to do that today for this class because I don't want to waste the time. I'm simply going to be using the database and the table that we already created in the previous class. So we go here, show database is, do a semicolon, and then we can go and we can take a look at our databases. The one that we're going to be using here is class DB. That is going to be our database. We're then going to go use class DB. And now we have changed into the class DB. I'm going to do Control L to clear the screen. And then just to make sure that we are in the right database, we'll do select database. This command, open parentheses, close parentheses, semicolon, hit enter. And so this just shows us that we are in fact in the correct database. This is important. Remember in the MySQL world, they don't give you warnings. They don't ask you if you want to do something. You type a command and it does the command. So if you're in the wrong database, it can get bad really quick. So always verify you're in the right database. Past that, then what we're going to do is we're going to do show tables to see what tables we have in here. Okay, so we have a users table. We will use the describe command, DESC users. to get an idea of what the users table looks like. So again, so for the users table, we've got a user ID, we've got a name, we've got an age, we have a gender. User ID is an integer and it is an auto increment. That is our primary key. Name is text, age is integer, and gender is text. So this is important. Again, one of the things that's very important is if you're going to be updating records, to know what data types you can use to be able to update. Is it a text? Is it a float? And again, like with integers, right? Int is a whole number, 11, 25, 1025. Those are integers. Floats or decimals would be 10.25, 100.50, 1150.25, right? So if you have a decimal point, that would be a float. So this is important, something very to be thinking about. Like if you have something like age, if you try to type in, 11.5 for an age, you might run into some problems. So you do need to make sure you know what data types you're dealing with here. And then finally, just to get an idea of what the data looks like within our database, we'll do select all from users. So this is select all columns from users, and we don't have anything else, no where statements here. So it's going to take all the records, and then we're going to hit enter. And so we can see the user ID. So number 1 is Bob, age is 9, gender is boy. Sue is user ID 2, age 15. Fred is user ID 3, age 8, gender boy. And this is kind of interesting here, just to kind of show you how this works. So before I did this class, I do a little testing. I just make sure I'm writing out all the statements properly. And so I was deleting and adding some records. And so one of the interesting things just to realize with this whole auto increment, so user ID auto increments. Every time a new record is created, it ticks up one place. So you'll notice Pat, even though Pat is in the 4th position, the user ID is 6, because we've actually at this point created 6 user IDs. I've simply deleted a couple of them because I don't need them anymore. But it is just kind of interesting to look at that from the auto increment standpoint to realize that Pat is not user ID 4 is actually user ID 6. And again, when you're doing things like searches, when you're doing things like updates, keeping that in mind can be important. Again, just because they're in the 4th position doesn't mean that's what like their user ID or the part ID or whatever is. So that's basically what we're looking at here. So let's do the clear the screen again. So we'll clear the screen and then we'll just do the select all from users. So we're taking a look at this. And so let's take a look at this and go, okay, so let's look at Bob. Let's say Bob has increased in age by 1 year. So Bob is now 10 years old. Yay! Bob is 10 years old. So how are we going to update Bob? So the way that we're going to update Bob is we're going to do update. Then we're going to say the users table. So whatever the table is, users table. And we're going to set. So what we're going to look here is age. So we're going to say the column age. We're going to set age to 10. Right? And then we're going to say where, for this, we're going to say user ID. So user ID here is 1 equals 1. And then we're going to do semicolon. So since these are numbers, since these are integers, I don't have to put single quotation marks around them. I can simply put a number there. And then I will hit enter. And we see a query OK, 1 row affected, blase, blase, blase. So then if I go up, I do select all from users again. We hit enter, and so now we can see that Bob's age is now 10 years old, where it used to be 9 years old in the past. So that's all you have to do to be able to update a record. So what you do is update the table, so update the users table, set whatever column it is, so we're doing age here. So we're going to set it to be equal 10, so the age will be 10, where, and then user ID, right, that's the user ID there, equals 1, and then you do the semicolon, and then it's able to update. Let me clear the screen. And now again, let's do the select all from users. And now let's say I want to change a string, right? So a string is just where you have to use the single quotation marks. So what we can do here is update users, set, let's say name equals Billy Bob. So let's say Bob just changed his name. So we now want to call him Billy Bob, and then we're going to close the single quotation marks. So again, when you're dealing with text, you want those single quotation marks, and then we're going to say where, and again, user underscore ID equals 1. And then we're going to do a semicolon there, and then we're going to hit enter. Hopefully everything says query okay. Again, if you fat finger it and you put anything in here wrong, it won't work right. Up. So again, select all from users. Then we're going to hit enter. And now we can see that Bob's name has been changed to Billy Bob. So that is a basic idea of how to do updates. So again, whether you're going to be updating a number, so as an integer or a float, you don't have to use those single quotation marks. Whereas if you were trying to update, again, a string, something like a name or a description or something like that, you will need to use the single quotation marks. So with that, let's clear the screen again. So now let's look at updating a record based off of the value of 2 columns, right? So one of the problems you run into in the MySQL world is as soon as you put an update, as soon as you put a change through, it just goes through. Again, you don't get a question of do you actually want to do this. So imagine if you have multiple records that are similar, and so you're a little careful. You're not sure if you want to update based off of a single column alone. Maybe you want to update based off of a couple of different variables, right? So if we go up and we take a select all from users and we take a look, and let's say we want to update Sue, but we're worried, right? So we want to update Sue, but we're worried that there might be a couple of other Sues in this particular table. So if we say update Sue, it will update all Sues. It'll update all Sues. So we don't want to update all Sues. So what we're going to say is we want to update Sue, who also has a user ID of 2, and then we're going to change her age to 16. So what we can do is we can do update, as we did before, the users table, set age to equal, what's she at now? 15, so it's going to be 16. Where user ID equals 2, so Sue's user ID equals 2, and name equals single quotation mark, Sue, close single quotation mark, because again, that is a string, and then you're going to do the semicolon. So basically, it is only going to update the age to 16 if the user ID is 2 and the name is Sue. So again, especially when you got larger tables. Right now, I'm showing you a table with 4 records in it. This may seem a little bit ridiculous, but imagine if it was 40,000 records. So you really want to make sure, right? If you're updating a record, you really want to make sure you're updating the right record. So we're going to hit enter, and we got query okay. So everything went through. If we go up and we take a look at select all from users, we can see that Sue is now at age 16. So that is where you can change basically that one value based off of as long as 2 columns are correct. So with that, let's do Control L again. Clear the screen. So now the next question is how can we update multiple values at the same time, right? So if we go up and we do a select, all from users, semicolon again. And so let's say we have Fred here. So Fred has had a birthday. Fred is now 9 years old, and Fred doesn't like to be called Fred anymore. No, he's 9. 9-year-olds get to be called Freddy. So he wants his age to be updated to be age 9, and he wants his name to be updated to Freddy. So how do we do that? So we use the update command again. Then we do users table. Then what we're going to do is we're going to set name equals single quotation marks, because we're dealing with a string here, and we're going to call him Freddy, close single quotation marks. And then we're going to put a comma in. Don't forget the comma. If you don't put a comma there, there is an error. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say age equals 9. So we're going to change his name to Freddy, and we're going to change his age to 9. And then we're going to say where user underscore ID equals, make sure this is right. Again, make sure this is right, 3. So we're going to do 3, and then we're going to do semicolon. Then we're going to hit enter, query OK, 1 row affected, blah, blah, blah. So we do select all from users again, and we can now see that user ID, he is now called Freddy, and his age is now 9. So this is how you're able to update multiple variables or multiple values within one update command. So now all I have to show you is how to be able to delete records. So again, we're going to type in that select all from users again, just to see what all the people in the users are. And we're going to take a look at this, and we're going to look at Pat. Oh, Pat just can't make up her mind. Is she in? Is she out? So she's decided to leave. She decided to leave our little school or whatever we have. So we are going to delete the record for Pat. So in order to delete the record for Pat, all we have to do is we just simply do delete from, and then the users table. So delete from whatever table that you're dealing with. Where, and then let's say user underscore ID equals 6. So Pat has a user ID of 6. So we're going to delete her. So 6. And then we're going to do semicolon. So this should delete Pat for us. And then we're going to hit enter. One row affected. Okay, so then we're going to do select, again, all from users, semicolon, and now we can see that Pat is gone. Now, again, just like with the update command, we can also put in multiple conditions. So if column 1 is true and column 2 is true, then do whatever it is we want to do. So let's take a look at Sue here. So let's say we're going to delete Sue. So if user ID equals 2 and name equals Sue, then we will actually do the delete. So again, we do the same delete command from the users table, where, and then we're going to say user underscore ID equals 2 for Sue, and, so we do and here, name equals, and then single quotation mark, Sue, close single quotation mark, and then we do semicolon. So delete from the users table where user ID equals 2 and name equals Sue. Hit enter, okay, so that should go through. So if we do select, all from users again, semicolon, now we can see that only Billy, Bob, and Freddie are there. Now, the next thing that I want to show you is why you have to be careful with these update and delete statements, because if it's true, the MySQL will do it. So with that, let's clear the screen again. And now let's just say we're having a brain fart. Let's just say we're having a brain fart. So again, we go select, all from users. And we take a look and we're thinking, okay, we need to delete Freddie. We need to delete Freddie. But for some reason, I kind of have boy in my head. I'm like, boy. So what if we do delete from users where gender equals just simply boy. That's all we do. We just type in boy. So especially this can be a problem with things like wildcard characters, because you can actually use wildcard, asterisks, that kind of thing in here. So what if you just kind of do something stupid? So you do an update, or you put in the wrong column, or you do a delete, right? So if we hit enter now, we can see okay, 2 rows affected. We're going, okay, so we got rid of one of these people. So let's do select. All from users, semicolon, erp, crap, right? And you will notice here, it did not ask you, did not say yes, it didn't say, are you sure? It just simply said 2 rows affected. It took 0.00 seconds to do it, and now you have an empty table. So do be careful. Again, when we start dealing with the columns, this is one of the issues that you need to worry about, because if you do an update or if you do a delete based off of one of the columns, and within that there are multiple values that are identical, basically what will happen is MySQL will perform that task on every time that the condition is true. So again, if you had multiple users named Sue, and then you change Sue's age from, let's say, 9 to 10, right? Remember, MySQL didn't ask what the age was before. So if you say set Sue's age to 10, well, the 9-year-old will get her age set to 10, and the 3-year-old will get her age set to 10, and the 45-year-old will get her age set to 10. anytime that value is true, anytime that condition is true, it will go through and it will process and it will change the age to whatever you've set. So that's why it's important to be thinking about using and command, or basically and conditionals. So if the name is Sue and the age is 9, then change to 10. But again, you have to be careful there, because what if you have two kids named Sue who currently are 9 years old? One of them just had her birthday, so she needs to go up to age 10, but the other one doesn't have her birthday for another 6 months. Right? These are the kinds of things that you really have to think about, not only when you're building out your database, but then when you're doing these statements, to make sure that when you type in a statement, it only does what you actually want it to do and there aren't larger ramifications. So there you go. You now have a full database system. Sort of, kind of. You actually have something that you can now really use. You know how to create a database, you know how to create a table, you know how to insert records into the table, you know how to be able to search through and basically select records out of the table, you now know how to update records in the table, and you know how to delete records. So really, when you think about it, that's what a database is. Because obviously we're learning MySQL and you're learning a database. But really, right, that's about what it is. So right now we understand how to be able to interact with a single table. As we go, I'll show you that whole concept of a relational database, where basically you have multiple tables and you're able to interact with multiple tables at one time. But right now, if you really think about it, being able to use a single table might be very valuable for you. Again, if you have like little IoT temperature sensors, and they're basically just pinging your database, inputting whatever the temperature is into the database, that might be something that you need a single table for. Again, just a simple way of tracking students for a class. You may only need a single table there. So, you really should think about it, like what applications could you create where all you need is a single table? And now you're able to create that. Again, in the real world, you will be using basically a scripting or a programming language to be able to interact with your MySQL database. Again, something like PHP, that will then create an HTML front end. So again, you'll have a form, and that form will take information from the front end and put it into the database. And then you'll be able to pull data out of the database and be able to write that again to an HTML form. But what you really need to be thinking about is basically all that HTML form is doing is it's basically just sending information for these SQL statements. The core concept, again, is simply being able to add records, to be able to view records, be able to modify records, and be able to delete records. Past that, everything is relatively simple. With what I showed you today, again, with the update and the delete commands, you do have to be very careful here. Because remember, MySQL is very specific and very unforgiving. Very unforgiving. It doesn't ask you if you want to do it. Are you sure? No, that's for the kids. That's for the Windows world. Asking, are you sure you want to do that? That's for the Windows world. When you're dealing with MySQL, you tell it to do something and it will do it, even if you told it to do something stupid. Again, if you tell it to do something like, update Sue's age to be 10, if you have multiple people named Sue, every person named Sue will get their age to be 10. And so that's why you have to think about how are you going to identify records within your table. So again, that's one nice thing with a user ID, right? Since the user IDs should always be unique, since you're using that auto increment thing. So then if you reference a record by the user ID, then you will only modify that particular user ID. Another way you can do it is by doing the and. So if the user, the name is Sue and her age is 9, then change the age. But again, you have to be careful, because once you start dealing with tables where it's not four records, it's 40,000 records, right? What are the possibilities? You'll have multiple users that both have the name of Sue and are currently 9 years old. Again, imagine you have one Sue who's 9 years old, and they have 6 months until they're going to be 10, whereas you have another Sue who is 9 years old in the system, but she just had her birthday yesterday, so you need to update the system to have her be 10. So if you then have two records where Sue is 9 in both circumstances, if you simply put, update blah, 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 set to 10, where Sue and 9, well, it'll actually update both of those records. So you really have to be careful about how you think about this. Again, the same thing is true with the delete, right? If you want to delete delete a record, if you delete based off of value, and then there are multiple records within that table with the exact same value, then you didn't delete one record, you deleted all the records where that condition happens to be true. So you have to be really, really, really careful with how you use these statements, because you can screw things up that quick. And so this is where we talk about, like in the technology world, there's the technological way of doing things, right? There's understanding commands, right? That's pretty easy. Again, select or insert or update, that's all simple. The complicated thing is figuring out how to use those commands properly so you don't destroy your database server. That gets a little bit more complicated. But at this point, yeah, you have a pretty good idea of how a lot of these things work. So definitely, play around with this, and then we're going to do some further classes to try to get more involved. Again, we're going to talk about how to have multiple tables. We're going to finally get around to creating user accounts and basically flesh out what you know now. But now at this point, you have the basic concept of what makes MySQL be MySQL, and so you should definitely play around with it. And again, tweak, try things. Do multiple conditions, do different kinds of things, and see what works, see what doesn't work, change data types, play around, and see how it does for you. So with that, as always, I enjoyed doing this class, and I look forward to seeing you at the next one. Apparently, the type of content you just saw is not what Susan W. wants for the future of YouTube. This means that recommendations by YouTube to this channel have dropped massively and views are becoming comically small. I hate to ask. I used to say I would never ask, but if you could subscribe, like, comment, and most importantly, share the videos that you appreciate, that may help slow the death of this channel. Do remember that if anything at all happens to this channel, you can go to EliTheComputerGuy.com to view the content and access information not available on YouTube.